Hey, what's up, Capricorn? This is the Sylgian Divineer, and I'm here to do a timeless general reading for you. Before I begin, I just want to stipulate that this is one of my first readings that I'm actually recording for all of you. So bear with me if some of my inexperience just happens to shine through here. Alright. Also, real quick, I wanted to make note that I myself am also a Capricorn. I have a lot of Capricorn in my chart, and I have a Capricorn sun. So, as I do this reading, I will do my best to make sure that I'm not accidentally reading from my own energy, and that this does stick as a general reading for all of you. One other thing, I'm having a little bit of trouble with my camera. Every once in a while it decides to freeze on me, so I'm going to be taking a look from time to time over at my screen to make sure that it hasn't frozen. So if I miss that for a pause of 20 or 30 seconds, I apologize for that. I still have to sort out some of the issues with how this is working, so bear with me on that part as well. Alright, so for those of you that know the drill, I'm not too familiar with the whole sun, moon, rising, Venus, sign placement, yada 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 yada. I hear that a lot on other tarot channels, but I'm not too familiar with what that means. So more specifically, I'm just leaving this in the general realm. And I'm not getting too specific on all of that sort of astrology stuff because I'm not too familiar with that. More specifically, what I'm trying to do here is do some card readings, which is what I'm really into. Another fact about me is that I'm not a big fan of drawing cards off the top. I'm a huge fan of clear confirmations through cards dropping out, cards flipping over, or cards giving a clear indication that they want to come out, sort of like this. This card is insisting that it be noticed, so therefore I'm going to pull this card as your initial energy. So let's see what you've got. Capricorn, you have the Temperance Angel in the upright. This is actually a very, very interesting card. I'm aware that this is a card that represents Sagittarius energy. The Temperance Angel represents... The Temperance Angel tends to represent the idea that greater quality is attained through refining impurities out of the system. So this is a card that calls for growth. This is a card that calls for understanding your weakness. This is a card that calls for embracing the good and leaving behind the bad. This is, very ironically, a card that is not about seeing the good in all things. This is a card that represents increasing your own power, increasing your own capability, increasing your own capacity through the process of refining the elements that are interfering with your greatest quality. It is a very powerful card. If you can embrace the temperance within yourself, you are setting yourself up to grow in ways that Spirit deems necessary for you. So, as a second clarifier, let's see what we've got here. We have the Page of Pentacles. Alright, so some Earth energy. That does stipulate Capricorn to a certain degree. The page is typically, pages are deliverers of messages. It can represent you. It also can represent somebody else. It is a very powerful page. In the upright and in the reverse, the qualities are quite powerful. The Page of Pentacles doesn't just represent the deliverance of a message. It very often signifies the arrival of a very dense emotional quality. It represents sort of grounding with, I suppose you could say, earthy energy, sort of natural energy, natural tendency. It's not exactly like the other pages, which are a lot more about sort of vocal delivery. This card often represents, it can often represent receiving a completely different quality of energy, a completely different resonance of, I'm kind of coming short on exactly what to call it, but it's a card that is very, very representative of receiving very grounding energy. And in the upright, that grounding energy is something that can actually serve you. It can serve you in the capacity of sort of, in a certain sense, moving you out of the purely mental realm and into the more resonant emotional realm by channeling more intuitive notions of energy as opposed to mentalism. Which is very interesting because starting off with the Temperance card, which is a call to refinement, the Page of Pentacles would clarify that to some extent, that the refinement you are looking for is not quite a mental refinement. It is not quite a logical, quantitative notion here. There is some kind of refinement that needs to come through your emotional capacity. There is some kind of refinement that you're being called to reach for that has to do with your heart more so than your mind. It has to do more so with, I won't use the word intuition because there's other cards that represent intuition, but it could also, to a certain extent, represent refinement through someone else's example of channeling those dense energies of the earth in ways that you are not familiar with. So that's kind of interesting. So now what we have is the Hanged Man. I just flipped out for you. In the upright, which is good. In the upside down position, the Hanged Man is a sign of stalling. It is a sign of procrastination. It's a sign of wasting the purpose of taking a step back to get a greater view of the situation. And it can represent, in the reverse, it can represent abusing the purpose of taking a pause and applying patience. So to a certain extent, it can represent procrastination. It can represent fear, letting fear of moving forward deter you. It is abuse of the purpose of the Hangman in the upright, which is what you actually have, which is the idea that you are trying to gather a new perspective on how to move forward before just jumping into moving forward. So that's interesting because with the Temperance card, as a call to refinement, the Hanged Man, if applied properly, can give you the insight from taking a step back and applying patience to determine what kind of refinement you are supposed to be tempering yourself into. And in the middle, having the Page of Pentacles, it is almost as if this temperance that you need to discover is not quite or I suppose more specifically, this refinement that you are looking for needs to occur as an emotional quality. It's an emotional refinement. But to gather that emotional refinement, since you might not be familiar with that style of temperance, since you're being asked to refine those qualities in yourself, there's a good shot that you're not familiar with them. So there's a good shot that you're not exactly going to be able to jump into refining those qualities, or you're not exactly going to be able to take someone's advice that would give you the ability to temper in this way. So there's a good shot that to achieve this temperance and to temper your emotionality in this fashion, you might have to take a step back and look at things from the outside in. And because the Hanged Man is right side up, even though it's depicted as upside down, that's right side up for you. It seems like a sign to not just jump in to changing yourself willy-nilly. Not to change yourself brashly, but to really think it through, and in this instance, more specifically, to really feel it through, and to really consider it, as opposed to try to apply the temperance. So I'm not sure exactly what that would be very specifically. It's also not clear if the Page of Pentacles would be somebody else assisting you in this process. Perhaps the Temperance Angel is asking you to refine yourself, and someone is showing up to help you with that, but you definitely have to consider it for yourself as well, even if somebody else can assist you with this process. Okay, so let me get another shuffle here. Since the Hangman is right side up for you, that is a good sign that you're not going to get held up in this process. That this process, you're not going to get stuck over analyzing the process. You are going to actually be able to properly do this analyzation. And that is a good sign that you could, in fact, achieve this temperance that you're being called to find. So I apologize a little bit for kind of the flightiness of this particular read. These cards are, I suppose, it's kind of interesting because the Temperance Angel is a call to action, whereas the Hanged Man is a delay of action for perspective's sake. So it's kind of interesting that these energies are meshing together like this. And then the Page of Pentacles, still, the Page of Pentacles is still a very powerful card about connecting with your emotionality, so tempering your emotions to some degree, qualifying your emotions in a different fashion, but not doing that in a way that is extremely rash or reckless, but to be well thought out about this process, well considered about this process. Even though it's an emotional capacity, you're still being called to a certain extent to perhaps mentally consider the factor, or to consciously consider the emotional factor. So that's kind of interesting. Not exactly sure, though. If that's all the clarity that I could provide here. I'm not sure exactly what kind of energy in particular you would be called to be tempering. Too many cards slipped out, so I'm not going to take those. That card trying to flip out. I'm curious if maybe there will be one or two more clarifications on the post-passivity of the Hanged Man. I'm curious if there's anything else to clarify, sort of what needs to happen to move beyond the Hanged Man, or whoops, something that needs to happen to get you beyond that point, more specifically. I'm not really getting anything else coming out at the moment. Alright, so I'm going to give this a few more shuffles here, see if I can get anything clear to come out, but if nothing emerges pretty soon, I'm probably going to leave the reading at this, so I apologize that it's kind of a light read. Once again, too many flipped out there. It's not a whole lot of cards. I do have one card trying to pull out here again. Two of these cards are trying to come out. So, seems like there's a few things perhaps trying to make the difference here. I don't want to keep you stuck here for nothing though, if I'm going to keep on shuffling. It just seems like I don't really want to leave it at the Hanged Man. That's a little bizarre to leave it at inaction. So I'm trying to get a final clarity for something else, but I'm not sure if it's actually going to emerge or not here. Oops, I messed up that split. Alright, Spirit, is there anything else? Anything else needs to be heard here? We do have one card trying to flip out. I was hoping for a little bit more clarity than that, though. And, so you got kind of an interesting read here. You have got the Two of Wands in reverse. So that's interesting at this point in the reading, because you're being called to temperance. You're being called to some kind of emotional temperance, some kind of grounding energy, not necessarily mental energy. You are being given a sign to perhaps take a moment of patience to retrospect on how to achieve this. But with this Two of Wands in reverse as a clarifier, that's very interesting. If we take a look at the Two of Wands in the upright, it's an interesting card where this person is holding the world in their hands, quote unquote. And the typical idea of this card is that this person is overconfident about just how much I'm kind of missing how to describe this, but this person is under the impression that they have achieved so much. So to a certain extent, it's kind of like a know-it-all energy. They're under the impression that they have made great strides and have achieved to great lengths. However, the truth is that they only have 2 wands. There are so many more wands to go, but they are illusioned about that fact, and they are overconfident. They're overconfident about just how much they've actually achieved. So because of that, they are essentially dreaming about everything that they could do with all of the capacity that they are under the impression they have, but they are illusioned about just how much more they have to go. They are illusioned about the fact that they are under the false impression about how much they've achieved. Even though, from their personal perspective, they have achieved a lot. There is a greater notion, there is a greater reality about, in fact, how much they have not achieved. And I know I'm not nailing the description of this card very well on this one, but in saying overconfidence isn't quite the correct word. They are just, this person is soundly mistaken about the gravity of their achievement. And they've sort of started to dream too soon. They are misinterpreting the quantity of their success, which gives us one issue here, because you got this card in the reverse. So with this card in the reverse, it's already kind of funky enough in the upright because this person is illusioned to their own success. In the reverse, though, it takes a different form in the fact that you know what, give me one split second. This card is a card that has not always dropped for me in a personal capacity. So let me take a quick second here to do a review. Okay, so in the upright, some clarification. Kind of the more traditional notion of this card is that the person has achieved some things, but they're dreaming of more achievement, essentially, is the more traditional approach of this. The idea is that they have achieved these 2 wands, and before they got those 2 wands, they were under the impression that that was going to be enough to sate them. But now that they've achieved the 2 wands, they are now disillusioned to that fact, and they understand that they actually have a lot more to be discovered. So often this card can represent the fact that despite you have made achievement, you are now more aware of the fact that despite the fact that your achievement is great on sort of a certain level, the achievement is quite good. You've now realized after experiencing that achievement, not just dreaming about reaching it, that there's actually quite a lot more to go. And you're interested in taking those new strides, and you're sort of dreaming about just how you're going to accomplish that now that you realize that you've got a lot more dreaming to achieve to a certain extent. So that's interesting in that context, because that's not so bad. However, in the reverse, it gets a little different, because you are... Okay, so this is actually very interesting. So in this notion, Whoops, and actually, let me make sure that my camera is still running here. Okay, good. So in this notion, you realize that you have these new decisions to make. You understand your disillusion, and you're looking to the future as to what comes next, which makes this very interesting in reverse, because essentially what is happening is, in the reverse, you are blocking the necessary mentalisms to actually move on into this new capacity. You are having anxiety about taking the new steps. You are perhaps complacent about where you are. So instead of having an eagerness, and instead of having a resolution to make the new strides, you are in fact you're in more of a resistant position to taking those new strides. You are more anxious about moving on. You are perhaps more disappointed than not that there is more to go. You thought you had achieved what you wanted, and you're finding yourself disappointed. So whereas this is the acceptance of the reality of just how much you've achieved and just how much more there is to achieve, this is kind of an energy of pouting. Not too severely, but to a certain extent, it's like you are pouting about the fact that you have to move on. And because of that, you are stifling your ability to move into the next phase, and you are resisting your own growth. You're resisting your own ability to find those new passions and achieve those new passions. And that is very interesting, because that is a way that you can meet a ton of resistance, which is definitely helping to clarify some of this, because in order to get over this energy, you are going to have to change something about yourself. You are going to have to temper away this Two of Wands energy of being afraid to move on into this energy of eagerness to move on. And to do that, you have to overcome the emotion of fear. You have to temper your emotional quality to be afraid of moving on, or to be disappointed that you have to move on. And you need to accept the fact that that is part of what life throws at you, is that growth is kind of baked into the cake, and your successes aren't exactly the goal. It is not actually what's going to make the difference. This emotional quality, tempering into this emotional quality, is not going to happen as long as you are bummed out about the fact that, unfortunately, it's not about having these wands. It's about you attaining them. It is about what you did to get them. The cliche way to say that is it's about the journey, not the destination, which is not my favorite saying ever. But that's unfortunately what's sticking here, is that you are stuck in disappointment about how you feel. upon your achievement. But that is something that is going to keep you stuck in this Two of Wands, and you're never going to move on to the later stages. You're never going to embrace moving on in this capacity. You are going to get stuck in your own disappointment, and you're going to wallow in your own disappointment. And to overcome that, you are basically being asked to change that emotionality. You are being asked to refine that quality within you, which is not a mental capacity. It's not something about your inability to think the right thing. You have achieved the mentalism to accomplish these wands. The issue is that you're running into an emotional block. You are emotionally blocked because you are disillusioned about how you are feeling about how these achievements have made you feel, which is an emotional capacity. It's an energetic capacity. And it's kind of a sign that you are not grounded properly. It is a sign that you need to retrospect your mentalisms about this. And you need to temper your emotional capacity as it relates to what your journey is all about and what you are trying to achieve. And that it's not going to be about how you feel at the end. How you feel at the end isn't ever going to be what carries you forward. You have to ground yourself in the excitement, the desire, I'm lacking any other words for it, but you have got to overcome this emotional block that is going to hold you back from moving beyond these wands through a recalibration and a grounding of your emotionality. It's not about you being incapable of achieving these things. It is about the fact that you are blocking your emotional capacity to energize your journey. And it's not that you don't want to be stuck here. It's that you can't be stuck here. You will not feel properly as long as you are stuck in this energy. You are going to have to, if you want to push into a more constructive, a more wholesome process of embracing the moment, you've got to do some retrospection on recalibrating your emotional grounding. And you've got to shift your energies to get back on track with moving forward and not being disillusioned about how you feel upon achievement, because it goes, all kinds of people who have ever achieved success have resonated with the idea that the dream achieving the dream is almost worthless. And the dream itself was always what was special. And if that's the case, because that's often how it works, then learning how to embrace your emotionality in the here and now is what you are going to have to do here. Otherwise, you are going to be stuck in a negative energy that traps yourself. No matter how much you think it's disappointing, no matter how much you think it's and I don't have great words because I've been through this feeling myself. It sucks. It sucks when your dreams don't deliver the emotional resonance you thought they were supposed to. It sucks whenever you realize that your achievements don't bring you the resolution in your heart and soul that you anticipated they would. Because why else are you trying to achieve these things? You're not trying to achieve these things for nothing. You're trying to achieve these things to embrace yourself differently, to provide yourself a different quality of living, to provide yourself something that is above and beyond your current circumstance. But the disillusionment, time and time again, through other people, this is something that's not just something I've experienced in myself, but it's something that other people have discussed. The utter reality of how Spirit makes this work is that embracing the here and now is always what is going to be special, not reaching the finish line. And until you can retrospect properly and accept that fact and recalibrate yourself to accepting the way that you need to ground your emotionality, you are going to get stuck feeling like this. You may already be stuck feeling like this. And you will be stuck feeling like this until you sort this out. So, honestly, that was an absolutely wonderful clarifier for this, for why you need to take these steps. I wasn't sure at first. It was just kind of pointing towards doing that, but I wasn't sure why. But this was a miraculous clarification. You need to shift into this. Shifting into this is how you are going to move into your Three of Wands, and it is how you are going to continue to value the dream, even though you now understand that achieving the dream isn't actually the purpose. It's the process, but not the purpose. So, get here. Do these things. Don't get stuck in this. You can find your way to the grounding that you need. And your journey will benefit all the more from it. All right. So after that clarification, I think I'm going to call it. That wound up getting up to like 40 minutes. This is a 40-minute read on 4 cards, but this got powerful. It actually got pretty powerful here after this clarification showed up. So I really appreciate it that you came to check this out. Thank you for taking a look at the Sylvan Divineer. Thank you for supporting this channel if you choose to do so. And good luck. Can't wait to see you in the next one. All right, Capricorn. Take care.